Marie Curie, a scholar, a lover, and an intellectual. What she has done for man has not been achieved in hundreds of years, and her advancements in the study of radioactivity are greatly appreciated. Marie was born in Warsaw, Poland on November 7, 1867, the fifth and youngest child of well-known teachers Bronislawa and Vladislav Skłodowski. But Marie's life changed when her mother died of tuberculosis and her sister Zosia died of typhus. The death of such close family members caused Marie to question God and question his existence, making her an agnostic. Like this, she would question every single experiment we should do, questioning its credibility. The family had lost their property and fortunes through patriotic involvements in Polish national uprisings. Maria had made an agreement with her sister Bronislawa to fund each other's education. In connection with this, Maria took a position as governess, first with a lawyer's family in Krakow, then for 2 years in Siechenau with a landed family, the Zarowskis, who were relatives of her father. While working there, she fell in love with their son, Kazimierz Zarowski. His parents opposed the relationship. Marie lost her position as governess and found another with the Fuchs family, where she spent the next year. Marie finally got her chance to study at the Sorbonne. Being as tenacious as she studied during the day and tutored during the evenings, barely earning her keep. She relished the opportunity to study amongst the great minds and professors of the world.
I think in the classroom she was probably very much treated cordially by the young Frenchmen. It would be more in the street that she might be treated differently.
All Marie did was work and sleep.
She fainted one time in a lecture, and they said, "What have you eaten?" And they really pressed her on the point, and it turned out over 3 days that's all she'd eaten, a bunch of radishes. Missing.
She was so focused on this opportunity to be a student, and that was so much the center of things for her that I think the poverty didn't matter at all. In fact, she described later that this period as a period in which she felt a precious sense of liberty.
During her studies, Pierre Curie entered her life. He was an instructor at the School of Physics and Chemistry.
I'm sure that probably 2 or 3 days after the first meeting, Pierre was convinced he wished to marry her.
Right.
In spite of the fact that when he was young, he has written, "Women with genius are rare."
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And he found one. Found one.
Marie and Pierre were married on July 25, 1895. In 1896, Henry Becquerel discovered that uranium salts emitted rays that resembled X-rays in their penetrating power. Expanding on this idea, Marie and Pierre conducted experiments on a substance called pitchblende, but their results were extremely peculiar.
So from this she had to conclude that there was some other element in pitchblende, some great unknown element there.
She concluded that pitchblende must contain small quantities of some other substance that was far more active than uranium itself. Her paper on the discovery of the 2 new elements was presented to the Academy on the 12th of April, 1898. What they discovered would change the course of science. What they had discovered was polonium and radium. Marie and Pierre worked extremely assiduously on their research and prized the discovery of the new elements like a child. They named the first highly radioactive substance polonium after Marie's home country, Poland. They named the second highly radioactive substance radium for the high radioactive activity it produced.
This wasn't just another element. This was an element that was radioactive, and this was the word that she and Pierre quickly coined, radioactive. That meant that it was giving off energy.
The experiment was rewarding in every way, and the Curies received a great amount of publicity over their discoveries, but at one cost: their health.
And had a child in the middle of all this, working extremely hard in cold and in soot, and with absolutely no precautions at the time because the dangers were not understood. So it was difficult, but it was also very exciting.
Their first daughter, Irene Joliot-Curie, was born on September 12, 1897. Their second daughter, Eve, was born on December 6, 1904. In 1903, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences awarded Pierre Curie and Marie Curie the Nobel Prize in Physics.
In 1903, they won the Nobel Prize for their discovery of radioactivity, and they became instantly enormously famous and popular in France. And they were hounded by the press. They were absolutely plagued by the press. They would come home at night and people would be waiting to interview them. They would interview their daughter, who was 4 at the time. They wanted to interview the cat.
But Marie was the type of person who pushed away fame. Pierre Curie, a man of great intelligence, passion, and curiosity. His frivolous spirit and work ethic were never questioned.
Curie's got into some wonderfully wacky antics. One time, Pierre Curie bound a sample of radioactive stuff to his arm. He kept it bound there for about 10 hours. When he removed it, he saw it had left a red burn mark, and he was inspired to keep a journal of the progress of this red burn mark. By the 10th day, he's noticing that the burn mark is way more angry, and by the 20th day, he's excitedly plotting the flows of pus and the formations, the exact formations of the mountains of pus crust. The excitement being here that obviously radioactive stuff destroys living tissue, so just possibly it might destroy cancer cells. Anyway, by the 40th day, skin is kind of reforming. By the 52nd day, it's pretty much disappeared, except for this little grey spot, which Pierre proudly declares to be the sign of a deeper injury.
But it was only time for tragedy to strike this young soul.
It's sometime after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's not like today, it's raining. It's some kind of monsoon. Pierre's got his umbrella up, and Pierre Curie is approaching the Rue Dauphine. He's stepping out into the road, and at the same time, there's a large wagon, a horse-drawn wagon. The driver sees a tram coming up the Quai de Conti. He's stepping out actually behind a little horse and carriage, and at the same time now is coming down that heavy wagon. Pierre's knocked, he's holding on now to the horse, he's twisted round by the horse, and the driver steers this way so that the front 2 wheels completely miss the prone body of Pierre Curie, but the left rear wheel goes straight over his head.
The shock was terrible, and I would say Marie was never the same after. And the problem for her was to convince herself to continue living. And she wrote something like, "My Pierre, how many times did you say to me yourself that if you didn't have me, you might work, but you would be nothing more than a body without soul? And how will I find a soul when mine is left with you?" Really, it was a terrific turning point in Marie's life.
After Pierre's death, Marie was left with only her 2 children. Through tragedy, Marie persevered. She herself said, "Life is not easy for any of us, but what of that? We must have perseverance and above all confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this must be attained. In 1911, it was revealed that Marie had an affair with Paul Langevin, a friend of Pierre's.
They had a pied-à-terre near the Sorbonne, and for some reason they left their love letters there. The result of that was that Madame Langevin, Paul Langevin's wife, hired someone to break into the pied-à-terre and steal the love letters, went to the press with them, and that became then the source of an enormous scandal in France about this love affair.
Through all of this, Marie was still able to win a second Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1911, but was not allowed to pick it up for the fear of the Academy being embarrassed.
This, I think, led to one of her most courageous moments, because she wrote back saying, I had believed that the Nobel Prize was being given for my work as a scientist and that my private life wasn't relevant, and I'm coming to accept the prize. And she went to Stockholm and accepted the prize.
In 1925, she succeeded in opening the Warsaw Radium Institute. As World War I approached, Marie decided to help the soldiers with her radium. The war left thousands of soldiers wounded, and she used radium to conduct X-rays. She rode around in Petite Curies, or Little Curies. Marie made her first triumphant appearance in the U.S. in 1921, and her second in 1929. She made her last visit to Poland in 1934. She died the same year, on July 4th. Now we celebrate the achievements and the legacy of the scholar, the lover, and the intellectual that was Madame Curie.